Hi, Jeff Bridgman here of Jeff R. Bridgman American Antiques in York County, Pennsylvania. I've come here today to talk to you about this fantastic Civil War chess set. Just the best that I've ever seen anywhere. In fact, I've really never seen another good one anywhere that even in the least bit approached this. The pieces here, which are completely remarkable. All 32 pieces are present and accounted for. Maybe one of the most miraculous things really about the board, and I haven't even gotten to the detail of it yet. But the pieces are the tallest 4 inches in height. The kings are 4 inches, the rooks are just a little bit under that, and the queens just a little bit under those at 3.5 inches. They're gigantic pieces. These are made of bone, lathe turned and hand carved, and just beautifully sculptural. There's reading on the heads of the pawns and elsewhere on the rooks. Really interesting turnings on the kings and queens. The bone is left natural on the white pieces, and on the posing it's painted or stained in red. It's really dark, looks like a paint, but it's absorbed into the bone itself, and is really interesting and beautiful. But what's one of the most remarkable things about it, probably the most remarkable other than having all its pieces, is the fact that these disassemble. So this board, which is period to the Civil War, its pieces disassemble so that it can be easier carried in the field. And they screw apart at various joints. So the bone here this is not done with metal. This is all very carefully tapped and dyed using the bone itself. So it's bone screwed into bone. It's just incredible workmanship. Now, the board itself is printed with the pictures of Abraham Lincoln and a contingent of Civil War generals. These are albumin photos, and it's a typical folding pressed paper board, but it's wrapped in Moroccan leather around the perimeter and decorated in gilt, and it's leather on the back, red leather on the back, and then it's in Old English lettering here. It says Hills National Chessboard, and then patented September 23rd, 1862. That is the second year of the war, and what a remarkable thing. Walter S. Hill and Samuel T. Reed worked in New York City, and they're responsible for the board and for its patent. We couldn't find the actual patent, but I did find references to it. Sometimes it's hard to find those things. You think, oh yeah, sure, I'll just go. No, it's not always that simple. But I did find reference to it, and what they patented was not this exact board, but any board producing photos, using portraits on the squares. So any chess or checkers board using photos for the square. Ingenious thing to do. And in fact, there are other boards known, and they are different. So the patent information that we got certainly makes sense, because I found at least 3 different versions. One of them actually has historical figures and Civil War generals. So it has everything from earlier presidents to generals and Lincoln, George Washington, and then things like authors. Yes, Longfellow was on one. So they were probably made for schools and other places, with the portraits sort of trying to fit different markets. Now, the other 2 boards also, one of them has Washington on it as well. The other one, so the portrait mixes are all different, is my point. And one of them is very little, like this, like 8 inches square instead of being 14 or 15 inches square, like this particular one. And the portraits are pretty great. Just in this one line alone, we have a great story. So the first guy in line is John Fremont, the Pathfinder, who ran for the presidency in 1856, first Republican to run for the White House. That's the anti-slavery ticket. It was unsuccessful that year, of course, but carried forward by Lincoln the next election year in 1860, and then in 1864, and Lincoln, of course, won both times. But Fremont challenged him for the nomination both times. Next is Winfield Scott, who was a Mexican war general and was chief of the U.S. Army. He was the chief officer at the time that the war broke out. And in 1852, he ran for president as the nominee on the Whig Party ticket. Whigs were gone by 1856. The next gentleman here is George H. McClellan, who Lincoln appointed to replace Scott as head of the Union Army. These guys didn't get along. I mean, McClellan wouldn't fight. That was a little bit of a problem. He just wanted to sit around and kind of prepare and look good. And they didn't get along because of that, and Lincoln removed him. And so in 1864, he ran against Lincoln for the presidency as the Democrat, and Lincoln beat him. So we have 4 guys who were presidential nominees here, and Lincoln, who won twice. Now, over on the other side, here's Halleck, who replaced McClellan for the next 2 years. And then that's not all. There's all sorts of interesting characters. Benjamin Butler ran for the presidency in 1880. We have Dix, who did 1,000 things, head of the Treasury, senator, governor, minister to France. So my point is, these are all really significant people, and such an interesting thing. Now, all the boards are rare, by the way. I mean, there's hardly any known. But the most interesting portrait here is 2 down from Lincoln and 2 over, where we have Major General Grant. So I first saw this, I looked at the portrait and I go, that's not Grant. I mean, I sell political memorabilia, and Grant's one of my heroes, and I think I've seen just about every portrait of Grant that's ever been taken. Maybe I certainly know them very well. And I said, well, wait a minute, though. I mean, it's an early war board using earlier portraits. Maybe that's like from, but he looks older. No, wait, that's not Grant. And then I just kept second guessing myself. So I said, okay, well, I better go research this. And I found, okay, it actually isn't Grant. Well, sort of kind of isn't Grant. That is that it's actually a guy by the name of William Grant, Bill Grant, a beef trader who just so happens to have strolled in to the same photo studio in Cairo, Illinois in 1862, wearing an Army uniform on the same day that Grant also went in the studio, and having just arrived from a major victory at Fort Donelson, where he became unconditional surrender Grant. Nobody knew who he was yet, really, but not, after that they did. That was his nickname, unconditional surrender Grant, which seems like a mouthful, but it was a really unusual thing at the time. I mean, usually there were conditions and they worked things out, but Grant, Grant always played to his own tune, and I guess they probably went down something like, well, maybe can we just, nope. They said, how about if we, nope, and maybe we can just, nope. And he just said, you guys come on out or we're going to come in and kill all of you. And they were like, okay. So, Grant was a really interesting character. He was tough when he needed to be, but he was very unbecoming. So Bill Grant, tall, sort of stately looking very much like a Civil War general. The actual General Grant being sort of short and with horrible posture and not really looking anything like a general. You can see how that might have gotten confused. So major newspaper printers of the time, anxious for a photo of the newcomer on the scene, were provided with the wrong portrait. So Frank Leslie's illustrated newspaper, Harper's Weekly, this was everybody's television for the war, if you will, because they produced all sorts of not only albumin photos, but all sorts of sketches. And so they, for the next 2 years, printed this photo many times for Grant, sometimes actually substituting with the right photo when they actually had one. So I heard rumors that Julie Grant, Ulysses' wife, when she saw this image, she had once sent him a letter demanding that he trim his beard. Now, I'm sure that when she saw it, she knew it wasn't him. I don't know if the whole story is a tall tale or not. Unfortunately, all of her letters to him were lost. We have his letters to her, but not the other way around. So we don't really know. Was she just toying with him? I mean, this guy has a receding hairline. Grant at that time did not. If it's obvious to me, she knew instantly it wasn't him. So maybe she prodded him a little bit and said, "Hey, you better cut your beard." But at any rate, what a great story. I mean, I did not know that until I bought this board, and I thought I knew a fair amount about Grant. So all of the boards, I went and referenced all of the other 3 boards that I saw, or 4. One's of the same variety, and 3 different ones. One bordered in green, one in black that's little, like I said, one in brown that may have been black. They all have the same image. And another really funny thing about it is that Grant got promoted to Major General, and they went in and doctored the photo of Bill Grant to put bars on his shoulders with 2 stars after he got the promotion. So they continued it, and that's the image that's printed here. So here he has the promotion already, and that's when the board was patented. So, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's just awesome. So, as a side note, Cairo, Illinois, the site of this incident, not a very nice place, I'm told, was at the convergence of the Mississippi River and the Ohio River. The Ohio River being the main way to the west at the time for anybody coming from Pennsylvania, New York, or New England. And the Mississippi being the largest river in America. Well, somebody thought that Cairo, spelled like Cairo, looked like the site of Cairo, Egypt, on the banks of the Nile. It was basically bought up by one guy who then told people it was paradise and sold them plots without them seeing it and hyped it all up. He was a con man, and people moved there and then found themselves in a swamp. So Charles Dickens in 1842 made a trip to America, and he went down the Ohio, and I'm going to read to you his impressions of the city at the time. There is an irony in this. The scenery as we approached the junction of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers was not at all inspiriting in its influence. The trees were stunted in their growth, the banks were low and flat, the settlements and log cabins fewer in number, their inhabitants more wretched and wan than any we had encountered yet. No songs of birds were in the air, no pleasant scents, no moving lights and shadows from swift passing clouds. Hour after hour, the changeless glare of the hot, unwinking sun shone upon the same monstrous objects. Hour after hour, the river rolled along as wearily and slowly as the time itself. At length, upon the morning of the third day, we arrived at a spot so much more desolate than any we had yet beheld, that the forlornest places we had passed were, in comparison with it, full of interest. At the juncture of the two rivers, on ground so flat and low and marshy, that at certain seasons of the year it is inundated to the housetops, lies a breeding place of fever, ague, and death. A dismal swamp, on which the half-built houses rot away, cleared here and there for a space of a few yards, and teeming then with rank, unwholesome vegetation, in whose baleful shade the wretched wanderers are tempted hither, droop and die, and lay their bones. The hateful Mississippi circling and eddying before it, and turning off upon its southern course, a slimy monster hideous to behold. Such is this dismal Cairo. Geez, Charles, tell us what you really think. So, what I think is funny about this is that this is where everybody wants to get their picture taken, at any extent. So, the board here is just the best of anything of any sort I've ever seen. It is the only board to survive with the actual pieces. Amazing. Absolutely amazing that they've stayed together, that all of the pieces are here, and just what an incredible thing for any lover of the Civil War and chess both. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing this good in a museum. And one of the most interesting things about it too is that there is an actual image of the officers of the 164th New York in front of a tent playing on what I think is the same exact set. Now, the actual one that's here on the wall, it's impossible to tell. But the same type, the same very tall and sculptural pieces. Now, it's an albumin photo and it's little, but you can tell in the image that the pieces are very, very similar, both in size and in form. At least the ones you can see, like the kings and queens. Are they playing on this type of board? It's impossible to tell. The board's laying down like this. It could be. But what's important to note, that this is the only one that survives with its actual pieces that I'm certain were sold with it. The red actually is very similar to the red in the board, having just a little bit of a pinkish hue to it. What an amazing artifact of American history. Should be in a museum? It's not. It's here. It is available for you to actually own. And that's an incredible thing about the world of antiques, is that we think that all this great stuff is all in museums. In some cases, the very best of the best objects are not. They're actually in private hands and available to own. Amazing. So thanks for coming along on a little ride tonight and having a look at this great Civil War chess set. See it on our website at www.jeffbridgman.com, and I'll talk to you again soon.